There is a town in Kansas where the post office still has a zip code, even though the last resident left in 1939. The buildings are still standing. The church still has pews. The grain elevator still has grain dust in the corners. But nobody is coming back because the federal government paid the last 150 families to leave and then plowed their land into a grass prairie. America is full of ghost towns, but not the kind you're thinking of. Not the ones with wooden boardwalks in Nevada and a gift shop selling gold pan kits. Those are tourist attractions wearing ghost town costumes. The real ones are different, quieter, stranger. Towns swallowed by reservoirs so a city 300 miles away could have running water. Communities founded before the Civil War, dissolved one purchase offer at a time. A town built on a coal seam that nobody realized was burning until a 12-year-old boy fell into the earth. In almost every case, someone made a calculation, and the people who lived there lost. Today, we're visiting 4 of them. Let's start with the town the New Deal erased. 1. Millboro, Kansas. The town the Dust Bowl didn't kill. The government did. Millboro, Graham County, Kansas. Founded in 1878. Population at its peak, 600. Population today, 0. It was not the Dust Bowl that finished Millboro. The Dust Bowl came close. In 1934, the topsoil blew away. The wells went dry. Half the county left. But Millboro held on. What finished it was the Resettlement Administration. In 1937, federal officials arrived with checkbooks and told the remaining families that the land was too damaged to farm. They were offering fair market value. They were calling it a voluntary program. It was not entirely voluntary. The families who refused to sell found that federal aid to their county was quietly redirected. There were no roads repaired, no loans approved. The school district lost its accreditation. Within 2 years, the holdouts gave in. The government plowed the town under. They seeded the fields with native grass. Today, the Millboro site is part of the Kerwin National Wildlife Refuge. The prairie looks pristine, beautiful even, if you don't know what's underneath. The last holdout was a woman named Etta Crandall, who ran the general store. She was 73 when she finally signed the papers. She told the county newspaper she felt like she was signing her own death certificate. She died 18 months later. The coroner listed the cause as heart failure. The post office zip code 67648 was officially retired in 1941. The USPS database still shows it as discontinued rural, not destroyed, discontinued. Millboro was erased cleanly, with paperwork and a check. The next town was erased with 30 days' notice and a bulldozer, and the people didn't even get to leave their dead where they'd buried them. 2. Loyston, Tennessee. The 646 graves. Loyston, Union County, Tennessee. 1936. 300 families, a church, a school, cemeteries with names carved in stone going back to the Revolution. In 1933, the Tennessee Valley Authority was created. In 1934, they announced the Norris Dam. In 1936, they sent letters. You have 30 days. There was no meeting in the village hall. There was no town assembly. There were letters, and then there were officials with surveying equipment, and then there were crews with bulldozers, and then the valley began to fill. Families were given minimal compensation. The TVA's own assessors valued the land. so the TVA set its own price for what it was taking. Some families received less for a farm that had been in their family for 100 years than it cost to rent a house in Knoxville for 12 months. The bodies were exhumed from the cemeteries. 646 graves moved to higher ground. 646 times, someone dug up a mother or a grandfather or a child, wrapped the remains in something, and carried them to a new plot on a hillside they'd never chosen. Norris Lake is beautiful. People water ski on it in July. In drought years, the waterline drops. The foundations of Loyston's houses appear. Families drive from Knoxville and Chattanooga to stand on a shoreline and point at the place where a kitchen used to be. Loyston was taken by water. The next town was taken by fire. Except the fire didn't come from outside. It came from underneath. 3. Centralia, Pennsylvania. The town that is still burning. Centralia, Columbia County, Pennsylvania. 1962. Population 1,100. An anthracite mining town on a ridge, with 7 churches, 5 hotels, 14 restaurants, and more bars than it probably needed. In May 1962, the municipal council hired a crew to burn the rubbish in the open pit landfill, as they had done many times before. The fire went underground. It found a seam of anthracite coal. The seam connected to the mine workings beneath the town. The fire has been burning ever since. For 20 years, the state of Pennsylvania insisted it was containable. It was not. Carbon monoxide started seeping into basements. Sinkholes opened in back gardens. In 1981, a 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski was walking across his grandmother's garden when the earth opened beneath his feet. He fell into a sinkhole 4 feet wide and 46 feet deep. He survived because he grabbed a tree root on the way down, and his cousin pulled him out. After that, the state started paying families to leave. Most went. By 2013, the official population was 7. 7 people in a town with street signs and a fire station and a grid of empty plots where houses used to stand. Foundations still visible in the grass. The fire is still burning. Geologists estimate it has enough coal to burn for another 250 years. Centralia still has a zip code. The post office was closed, but the zip code, 17927, was never retired. There is technically still a Centralia, Pennsylvania. It is just on fire underneath. Centralia burned because of an accident. Nobody planned it. Nobody profited. But the last town on this list was destroyed entirely on purpose by people who knew exactly what they were doing and did it anyway. 4. Mossville, Louisiana. The community bought one house at a time. Mossville, Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana. Founded in 1790 by freed Black Americans, decades before the Civil War. One of the oldest African-American communities in the United States. Churches, schools, shotgun houses on shaded streets. A community of roughly 1,000 people who had built something in a place that did not make it easy to build anything. Then the plants came. Between 1930 and 1990, 14 industrial facilities were built within a 3-mile radius of Mossville. Petrochemical plants, a vinyl chloride manufacturer, a PPG Industries facility, a Conoco refinery, a CITGO facility. Residents noticed. Children developed rashes. Adults developed respiratory problems. A 1998 study by the Agency for Toxic Substances found that dioxin levels in Mossville residents' blood were 3 times the national average. The response from the state The plants had operating permits. The companies were within legal limits. There was nothing to be done. In 2013, the South African petrochemical giant Sasol announced it wanted to build a massive ethylene plant. The last large open land parcel available was Mossville itself. Sasol began buying houses, not through eminent domain, through individual purchase offers, one family at a time. By 2019, Mossville was gone. The last holdout, a man named Stacy Ryan, who had been born there and whose grandparents had been born there, accepted a buyout after years of refusing. He said the air had become unbreathable. The Sasol plant opened in 2019. It is one of the largest petrochemical complexes in the Western Hemisphere. Where Mossville stood, there is now a facility that produces ethylene for plastics. 4 towns, a federal resettlement program that called itself voluntary, a valley with 646 moved graves, a town on a coal seam that has been burning for 60 years and will keep burning for 250 more, and a community founded by freed people before the Civil War, dissolved one purchase offer at a time, replaced by a plant that makes plastic. Every one of them has something in common. Someone made a calculation, and the people who lived there found out by letter. The paperwork was always in order. The compensation checks cleared. The permits were valid. They don't look like loss. They look like a wildlife refuge, beautifully restored to native prairie. They look like a reservoir that people water ski on in July. They look like a Superfund site with an ongoing remediation schedule. They look like the largest petrochemical complex in the Western Hemisphere. They look like nothing at all until you learn what used to be there. And then they look like everything.